Morning, everyone. Welcome to No Law Firm Left Behind. It's May 11th, and we are without Jim Gass today. I know it might say that it's me, or that it might say that it's Jim, but he's actually out of town this week, so I'm going to be leading the show. We do have Vinny here with us this week still. And if you remember, No Law Firm Left Behind has three key pillars. Vinny, why don't you go ahead and share those for us?
Yep. We want to keep your firm productive. We want to keep your customers calling. And we want to, what's the third one? My mind is a blank right now.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm running late and I'm a little bit behind.
No, it's totally okay. And I kind of caught you off guard. So we want to keep ourselves competitive, keep our employees working. We want to keep our customers calling. So,
and it's funny because I'm the one that always asks to hey, we need to make sure we say this.
Exactly. But it's all okay. So, if you were with us last week, you know that we are dedicating the next several shows to the concept of a cloud-first strategy. And last week we talked about a number of different areas where we're going to look at the cloud as an alternative to our previously on-premise solutions. Yeah. So today we're focusing on phone systems.
Yes.
And so where people, used to have expensive servers on site and dedicated phone lines and this, that, and the other thing. Now we're seeing the rise of the online cloud-based VoIP systems, the VoIP systems. And so we're just going to spend a little bit of time today talking about, one, why people should be thinking about moving their phone systems to the cloud, and two, just some of the things that you should be aware of before making that step, just things to sort of think about. So, Vinny, I know you do a lot of this kind of work.
Yep.
Where you are deploying VoIP phone systems. And, just full disclosure, at SpliceNet, we partner directly with a system called Citricom. And so if you hear us mention the phrase Citricom, just know that we work a lot with that ourselves, but we've also worked with numerous other phone system vendors and whatnot. And so, but if you just hear us say Citricom, you can insert, your flavor of VoIP system as a substitute. So, Vinny, are you seeing, how prevalent are you seeing this move to cloud as people are coming up on the end of life of their current phone system? What's driving this move from what you can tell?
So the primary factor, I think, is cost. And then the secondary factor, to me, which is almost the same value as the primary factor, is the work from anywhere capability.
Okay.
Right? That's what people are looking for. They don't want to make another huge investment in a phone system that they can only use when they're in the office, right? They want to be able to use their phones anywhere.
Right.
And they want to have that number, their office number, anywhere they are. And I think that's the primary driving factor for like a hosted voice over IP system.
So let's start by talking about sort of traditionally what some of these costs really are when we're talking about that in the office phone system. It's not just a phone on a desk.
That's right. So for a traditional phone system that you host at your location, right? Whether it be a digital or even your own voice over IP system, there's cost for the physical phones on the desks, right? Mm-hmm. There's cost for the phone system that runs those phones, and that can vary depending on whether you want things like IVRs and call queues, and all the different call routing and ring groups and music on hold, and what kind of voicemail do you want? What features in voicemail do you want? Right? That cost can go from this to this pretty high, pretty easily.
And it's a pretty significant, when you're talking about a phone, the phone system being there, you're talking about another, oftentimes another physical box actually sitting on premise, another thing that can fail basically.
Yep.
Another thing that you have to normally pay for maintenance on.
Yep. And that's what I was going to say. I just mentioned first just the hard costs, the
Uh-huh.
one-time costs. With a traditional phone system, you still have to have a phone line, a phone service, right? And that could be a PRI, that could be individual lines, and that's a monthly cost that you're incurring over and over again. And those costs can go up or down. You're paying for things like long distance. You're paying for the maintenance of the phone system itself. So if you want
Mhm.
updates, if you want somebody to troubleshoot it when there's problems, right, all those costs are the actual ongoing costs, as well as whatever you pay, the thousands of dollars that you're going to pay for a phone system, even today.
I mean, and even in our environment with some of our, you know, SMB space customers, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even somebody with, say, 10 to 15 phones.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen it easily run even closer to eight to $10,000 in just the hardware investment up front, right? I
Yeah.
mean, is that kind of what you're seeing? Or
I mean, I can see a phone system $10,000 to $15,000 easily,
okay.
including hardware. And, conference room phones. Okay, so what do I want to do there? Do I want an actual phone? Do I want a conference room phone? Do I want the extended mics and everything else? All these different costs that you don't think of. Wiring. If you I mean, if you're going to a newer phone system that's not a digital based phone system, and that's the cabling you have for your phones, you may have to consider
Mhm.
wiring. Right? So there's a lot of different things to consider when you're considering upgrading your existing phone system to another phone system that you house. Plus, um, I mean, on a lot of these, you don't have a lot of remote capabilities unless you start poking holes in your firewall, which again opens you up to security issues. So,
Right. I mean, with regards to some of these remote capabilities, some of these advanced features,
mhm,
one of the things, and I'm not going to jump the gun, I don't want to jump the gun too much
mhm,
about some of the benefits of the cloud based phone system, but it's more than just working from anywhere. It's also what devices you can use to
mhm,
access your phone system.
mhm,
With the on premise, with the traditional phone system,
mhm.
um, are you seeing a lot of parallel? Are you seeing the option to work with soft phones and things like that? I mean, it's coming along, but it's not the same though yet, is it?
Yeah, well, some of the bigger names do have like their soft phones, or you can download a generic soft phone that you can connect to one of the more traditional phone systems. Um, uh, and some of them are working on integrations with things like Teams and other applications
Okay.
there, right? So it. I don't think that they're necessarily always falling behind, right? They don't the experience is not the same though. When I use my app right in the office and I use it at home and I use it on the road, I had the same experience across the board. Um, Versus, do I have to jump through a couple of hoops to make the phone work,
Right.
or what do I have to do? The ease of use to me is a big
Well,
thing.
and that's what I was going to say. It seems like that there's just a lot more tinkering that has to take place, a lot more, things that have to line up properly to make sure everything's consistently working, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and even in the management side, from an IT perspective, all the things that have to be done in preparation, and then they have to be monitored, and they have to be managed, and they have to be maintained to make sure that your phone system is accessible from anywhere.
Hmm.
And again, you're trying to remove the overhead. You're trying to make it simpler for folks. And one of those things you're looking to simplify is the administration of it.
Got it. So let's kind of flip things a smidge here, and let's
Mhm.
move to this cloud-based phone system. Before we jump full on, because I think it's going to be a mirror image of sort of what we talked about, some of the limitations of
Mhm.
the traditional phone system. Before we start talking about what you're seeing in the cloud-based systems, what are people making this move only when they are at the end of life with the current phone system and looking at that expensive upgrade, or are you seeing people sort of midstream deciding, what, our phone system still works, but we want X, Y, and Z? I mean, what's sort of the breakdown as to when you're seeing people perform this evaluation?
I think it makes sense for most people to do it when when they're thinking about replacing their phone system. Some folks are doing it. Hey, I'm relocating my office, and at this point, does it make sense to move everything, or should I just start with this new phone system there? Right. So usually people wait for some kind of event to move. COVID was an event, right?
Yeah.
That we say, okay, now I need to make this switch to work from home, and I need all my people to work from home, and I need them to have their extensions to make calls, and I may want them to have their headset and their handset, so that because they're going to be full time there, and so um, people at that point uh, uh, rushed to make a switch at times as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So basically, we're talking, either end of life, and we're faced with that decision as to whether or not to spend all this money to upgrade the phone system and stay in that cycle,
Mm-hmm.
or another situation, we're moving offices, and so we don't want to have to move all this stuff and reconfigure it all, et cetera, et cetera. Or three, hey, the work from anywhere mentality has become so pervasive and critical to our business that we need to make sure that the phone system supports that
Mm-hmm.
and works well. So, I mean, I think those are three really great, examples of why someone would make this change. And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, when it comes to a cloud-based system, what's the most important piece that makes all this other convenience factor work? I mean, what's really that linchpin? What's the main difference between the traditional and the cloud-based? What is it? So, what is a cloud-based phone system, first of all?
So the cloud-based phone system basically is where you don't house your own equipment that's required to make calls. All you have is a handset on your side,
Okay.
or a soft phone on your computer, or a soft phone on your cell phone, right? And sometimes all three. So that eliminates several factors. One is, um, for example, if you decide to host your own system, right, you're responsible to making sure that electrical problems, connection problems like phone lines and such, and then connectivity back in if someone's working remotely, so the internet as well. And so with a hosted phone system, you're offloading that to somebody else who's doing this on a much bigger scale, who has a much bigger budget, and has a much higher level of reliability and availability, right? So one huge advantage of the phone system is that somebody's managing it, somebody's updating it all the time. There's minimal downtime, um, and uh, and the reliability is so much higher because of those factors.
Should we mention, like, that this concept, I don't know if people have heard, the acronym PBX, right?
Mhm.
Um, I'm not sure if people understand exactly what all goes into a business phone system. Um, it's more than just a bunch of phone numbers. It's more than just a bunch of
Mhm.
direct dials, right? I mean, we've got a lot of different functions that all need to be managed somewhere. We've got, transfer abilities, we've got conference call ability, we've got video call ability in certain circumstances, we've got voicemail management and voicemail to email features and all that good stuff. What about like call routing and all
Mhm.
that? The ability to flow through based on time of day, whatever status you've put yourself into, and so on and so forth. These are all the things that you're saying you don't manage on site anymore. It's all done, like, how do people manage their stuff if they want to set all this up?
So most vendors, right, will have a support team
Okay.
that will guide you through that, or even set it up for you. They have an onboarding process. From a SpliceNet perspective, we manage that for our customers,
Okay.
and it's all web based. Very easy to manage, very easy to use. We've set up call queues, call groups, different schedules. I want this to happen from this time to that time, but I want something else to happen at a different time, right? Um, and so, for from a management perspective, right, we're setting up the system, but ultimately, from a reliability perspective, the bigger guy that's doing this for lots and lots of customers who has a much higher level of redundancies, it's ensuring that the system is up. So we would set up, or you would set up, as from your perspective, you would set up the extensions. You would plug them in, right? You're responsible for the last mile of those things, but the actual phone system itself, right? The phone system itself, the PBX that runs all the
Right.
call routing and all that, that's managed and maintained by the vendor.
And so, you mentioned this whole configuration of the last mile. Um, it just basically means that you have to ensure you have some sort of internet connectivity somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's say the office goes dark for whatever reason. Somebody's, doing construction. They cut your fiber line or something like that. Now
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden your office site is dead. You just basically look at everybody and say, "Hey, go home."
Yep.
And what's the process of whether it be a COVID style work from anywhere or a disaster recovery business continuity, we have to pick up and go somewhere else. What's involved with your phones? What do you
So
have to do if you're in this situation?
so if you have a soft phone on your laptop, you just take your laptop home and it starts working, as long as you have
Okay.
an internet connection. If you want to take your desk phone, your physical desk phone home, you unplug it, plug it in at home, and it starts working. That's it. It's simple. There's nothing to do. There's no routings. There's no routing changes. There's no firewall changes. There's nothing required. It just, because it's hosted in the cloud already, right? Your phone can pick up service anywhere.
And from what I've seen, just kind of add this in, whenever we're telling somebody, or advising somebody on the success of cloud-based phone system, we always tell them, hey, you need to have nice, high quality, fiber-based internet connection at your office.
Mm-hmm.
People don't have that at home, but they also don't have 10, 15, 20, 50, 100 people
That's
trying to
right.
make calls at the same time. So at least from what I've seen over the last year plus, as people have picked up these phone systems and gone home on their DSL connection, cable connection, whatever it is, the call quality is still really good.
Yeah.
So
Most people don't know when I'm working from home versus when I'm in the office. We do have a nice fiber connection, Ethernet connection at the office,
mhm.
and that works really well, right? But at home, I just have traditional the Phi optics, right?
Yeah, just a
Which is
regular home internet connection. You plug it in, boom, pick up
yep,
your phone and make calls like always.
it's just a home connection, yeah.
Yeah,
And the difference is, it's just me on here, and that's the case for most folks, right?
right.
You might have two people. Even if you have two people, I think you'll still be okay, right?
Generally speaking, yeah.
But for the most part, any connection. But even my cell connection, which is slower than my home connection, right? I still am able to make calls on it when I'm out on the road, if I'm at clients or.
So now here's a nice little thing, and this is more soft phone stuff,
Mhm.
but it still ties into the whole VoIP discussion.
Mhm.
One of the most important things about soft phone utilization is I don't have to give people my cell phone number anymore.
That's
And they're
right.
not going to get my cell phone number when I call them anymore.
Mhm.
Because if I've got, my app on my phone, all I do is dial through that
Mhm.
and they see my office number. They
That
don't
is
see my cell
correct.
phone number anymore.
Yep.
So I think that's a huge benefit that a lot of people that are, the road warriors or the people that, they're just maybe I'm not always in the office. Take someone like me. I travel a lot. And so I'll be out in the middle of nowhere sometimes. If I got to make a business call, I want to be able to just know I can pick up my cell phone, open this app, boom, 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 and it just works. And nobody
Yeah.
is none the wiser.
I have folks from the office transfer me calls all the time to my app, and they just use my extension. They don't have to dial my number. They just as if I was in the office. They just dial my extension, and my phone rings. Whether technically all three of them ring at the same time, right? But I
Very
never
cool.
since
Very cool. So we know what the pros are here. We've covered that pretty well. Features, flexibility, reliability, and
Mhm.
cost.
Mhm.
But what are the big things, if somebody's contemplating making this move to a cloud-based phone system, and I just want to spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes talking about this, and then we can wrap things up. What are the big caveats that people need to think about before they handle this?
Yeah, I think one of the bigger things that people need to consider as they move to a hosted system are the types of integrations that they have built into their current systems. A hosted phone system is probably going to have a lot more capability to integrate other types of systems, CRM systems, and such. You have to do your homework to make sure that the hosted provider that you're using does have those integrations or is at least working on those integrations, right? So to me, that's a big piece. If you're used to, I worked at a company that it was Skype is no more, right? But the phone system was tied into Skype, right? I've worked for companies where the phone system's tied into Salesforce, right? And I'm not saying that hosted systems can't do it, but you need to ensure that it has those capabilities. Somebody asked, "What about existing numbers?" You can bring all your existing numbers in, right? All those numbers that you have on your phone, those are all you can bring those port all those numbers in and bring them into the hosted system. So
Yeah, so I mean, and that's always, if there's ever one place where any phone system migration falls down,
mhm.
at least in my experience, it's always been dealing with the current phone providers'
Bringing the
flexibility
numbers
in the
in.
porting process. Um, and I think that it's an important thing to think about, as we're doing this move, what kind of downtime are we going to have? What kind of uh, service interruption are we looking at? And I think that it's important that that all gets discussed ahead of time. What's our strategy for the cutover so that we don't have dead phones? People
Yeah,
aren't getting voicemail for hours at a time. That would just be no good.
yeah. Typically, the cutover is for most folks is seamless, right? There's training involved, and I think there's a little curve in there where we have to consider that. But for the most part, there should be little to no downtime on these types of migrations, because we can do things to while we wait for the port process. There's things we can do to make sure that calls are coming through. There's a lot of different things that we can do ahead of time as we plan it, and to make sure that there's almost no downtime. I can't say no downtime at all because the port process, if you're bringing numbers in, um, it's gonna be there's gonna be a few seconds of downtime, right? Um, but uh, but definitely you can make this where there's almost no downtime.
Well, and even if you've got a situation there, if you run into a problem with the porting process, most of the time the system you're moving to can at least allow you to still do outbound calls and whatnot, and you
Mhm.
could do forwards and things like that. So there are still
Yep.
some options there if you run into problems. But I think it's good to realize that there's sometimes quirks that happen.
Yep.
There's really two other things that I would want to add, and I mentioned it earlier.
Hmm.
Is if you are considering going to a cloud-based phone system, you need to make sure that you've got good internet connection at your office. And when I say good, I don't just mean high speeds. It
That's right.
really, you need to have a fiber connection is our general recommendation. There are the rare exceptions for really small places where they can get by with something else, but
It,
almost, I mean, exclusively. I
the
mean, really,
reality is that
yeah,
it needs to be full duplex, right?
yeah.
And that's really the key, because a full duplex
You want to
25
you
by
want to you want to translate what that means to people that might not know what full duplex means.
yes, that means it can transmit and receive at the same time. That's the simplest explanation I can think of. If it
Basically,
has to,
it's a two lane road instead of like
yes,
a one lane where traffic comes through and then that car exits and then the other car can go. Right?
yeah, yeah, and so that's the biggest difference between a home internet and like a dedicated full service line. And speed is not the biggest factor. We have a lot of customers who run 10 phones on speeds like 50 megs, but
Hmm.
because the fully dedicated, fully monitored, quality of service guaranteed, and full duplex line, right? Um, the phones have no issues. But then we have customers who have a 200 meg line, but it's more of the DSL type service,
Right.
and so it's they get call collisions, and that's where you
Yep.
get either the echoes, or you get the interruptions where what you say is delayed or what the customer says is delayed, and that kind of thing.
One other thing that popped into my head here, because I said I had two things and now it's three. It's not just that phone connection. You need to make sure that in your office you have a quality business level. We're just going to call it firewall. Okay. Because if you go down to your local big box store and just buy something off the shelf and plug it in, it might not have all the right quality of service features and whatnot to make sure that you've got good call quality. Okay.
And that's when you have multiple users, right? Because
Uh
most
huh.
people at home are going to
Right.
have just a home router, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm talking about in the office. So you in the office, you want to make sure you have good internet connection and a good device on your end. We're just going to call it firewall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the final third thing is always check when you're looking at different systems what kind of configuration you need to do. One of the things that we really love about working with Citricom is when they send the phone to the end user, it's ready to go. It's set up with their extension. It's got everything programmed. They literally take it out of the box, plug it in, connect the internet, and their phone is there and ready to go, pending the porting process of the cutover. But they don't. You don't have a bunch of people running around your office trying to configure these phones and whatnot, bringing up this person here and that person there. It just shows up and it's there and it's ready to go. So that's another thing that I would always look at when you're doing a vendor selection process is how easy is it to just pick it up out of the box and start.
And I'm not trying to be vendor specific here, because there are lots of options for
Mm-hmm.
but one of the advantages of most hosted providers, right? Some don't do this, but I know Citricom does. Is there's no hardware to pay for. You're paying for that service, right? This is when I said there's a cost advantage, it's like you're not paying for the phone system, and you're also not paying for the phone, right? Unless you want a very specialized phone, like
Right.
conference room phones, like the Polycoms and such, you'll pay a small upcharge on that. But the cost of the equipment is typically built in. I know for sure it's built in on the Citricom side, and there are a few other vendors. There are some hosted vendors that will charge you the phone for the phone, just a small charge per month. But they also, if that hardware breaks, I don't have to pay for another one, right? They just send me one. If that phone has an issue and it's defective or there's a problem with it, I don't have to spend the cost of buying another phone because it's included in my plan. They just send me another one.
And at the end of some certain predetermined period of time, you're eligible to get a new phone. Yep. So you get the latest and greatest.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, that's awesome, Vinny. I just thank you so much for sharing. I know you do a lot of this stuff, and to share your experience with it and the pros and cons is great. We're coming up on 11 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Before we end, I want to make sure that we put up our little link to our No Law Firm Left Behind on LinkedIn. And I know Jim always bemoans the atrocity, which is the actual link. And so if you want to just, take a picture or whatnot, or you can just search for No Law Firm Left Behind on LinkedIn. Hopefully you join the group. We are always, having nice discussions and whatnot. You get a lot of additional information that we just don't get time to cover on the webcast itself. So there's that link. Vinny, next week, what are we talking about?
Next week, we're talking about email and email and data.
Email and like file storage and stuff like that, right?
If you're moving to the cloud, what should you be considering for email and data? Like what are the considerations that you need to look at as you're planning this?
And Jim should be back. He will be hating the fact that he's not in sunny Orlando anymore, but he will be back with us, and we look forward to seeing everybody then.
All right. Take care.
Have a great week, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.